Genshin Impact is not dying. Quiet annual video Genshin dis and is dead 25 times. In NATLAN we have had cinema, like everything that led to the Arch of Captain, which may or may not be playable, and many of us hope it will be playable. Leave me in the comments if you would like it to be playable or not and why. Mavuika was not only cinema but is a character who broke all the records of damage in the accounts of Genshin players and also most of Genshin players. He's got this character. Poor little Phil tells him I don't have Mavuika. It hurts me, it hurts me. Don't worry, I'll try to get Mavuika back soon. But it's true that Genshin Impact sells a lot of smoke and then doesn't meet real expectations that people have continuously. And that even though they think they can live continuously from taking advantage of the players and that, the game really what they give us is not even 20% of what was expected or promised. After 4 years is making dent in the market, in the numbers, in the quantity of players and the confidence that the players themselves have in the game. Genshin Impact not only hasn't met expectations in 2085, calmly, it's not dying. And in fact, he's still the leader of the gacha market way to the limit, but he's still the leader. But he has made great problems and disappointments to the players he's going to start.
Are you serious? This is torture. You're torturing me and everyone else watching.
Half of the region forward, as happened in Sumeru, that all the final half. Sumeru was super boring and people almost dropped Genshin Impact. Same with Fontaine. Although they started to put in quality of life and so on, and before NATLAN became quite. But except for the 4.6 by Arlecchino and the 4.7 by the small runner Furina. Again, Fontaine's ending was like that, and I think we're coming to a similar ending in NATLAN. We won't know, but apart from all that, there are many other important factors like others. Gacha, the evolution of the general market for video games, the awareness of the information on how all gacha game systems work in general, and all this is affecting not only Genshin but social media, the quantity not only of players but of interest to the game itself, and to one of the biggest drooping general falls of what is content, interest, number of simultaneous players, and a lot more than not, just when the thing is wrong and Genshin dies he could do. To call crisis but not to meet expectations, and that all of this is a sign that things could lead to a bigger problem could also be a small crisis. So leave a good like, a good ulti of Bennett, subscribe, leave a good comment, thanks for watching and watching the video and channel, thanks for having the love and support, blessing once a day for commenting, subscribing and giving like to the videos of the channel. Remember, so very lucky and I hope that it will touch you. It is drawn one a day in all the videos, so watch out. In all the videos, no, one a day. And it affects commenting on all videos. Make the most of it if you're eating, and it's very rich. Welcome guests to the directs. And let's talk about what's going on in general with Genshin Impact. Very well the premise I said in the intro, but I think you know. Everyone who calms down does not die. The game remains technically the leader of the market. But it is true that there are quite a few things wrong and worse than before in NATLAN. There has been also many things well. One thing does not take away the other. Mavuika breaking the false sky, giving rise to 80 billion more theories again. Although the false sky is one thing that we know from 1.1, when Oscar Amouche came and told us that literally the sky, it was fake. I mean, it's not something new, but they've been able to give that talk just by doing that. Mavuika breaks the sky with a punch like the fist of the dragon of Goku. If it is a technique that does when it does not transform into Super Saiyan, the oldest school will know the fight against Super Android 17, and before it becomes Super Saiyan. That's another conversation for the freakiest fans of Dragon Ball, but not only that, but that have really happened, as I say. Very important precedents in Genshin Impact, people. I was already very disappointed in Fontaine, and only a big change could regain confidence. All of the players in NATLAN, Hoi oversold smoke and the capture of the glow that is only I. A very nice animation that to this day, being honest and sincere, has been seen very little and has not changed at all the game experience of the players more than a little. The Cephos Frost that was quite staff from 5 to 5.5 to be implemented. A rework with a Nostaphosa, but they literally gave us a placebo. They told us, look, that people got illusions and expectations, and when we tried it, we all realized that nothing. You're welcome. It's true that there's always the person who says, but I once got an item, of course. Is a some good item has to be. But if you check most social networks of it, big and influential content creators that we have access to hundreds of thousands of feedback by, not to say millions of people's opinions continuously, stammering Frost, swindled. Pretty much it was scamless at 5p5 and basically everything that was really thought of as an improvement, and a spectacular change in NATLAN ended up being just a 1 or 2% real improvement, that is to say one thing, expectations and what they promise us, and another, what is the net improvement, the reality of what improved the game. And while it is true that they have put in quality of life, how little they have gotten into it, I have the feeling. Leave me the comments if so that you have implemented it late, is to say Genshin Impact as video game lived an apogeo in his first and second year, even the third that was Sumeru with a implementation of Dendro where it did not stop growing, and really all these quality of life improvements should have implemented them in those years to maximize their potential growth, and above all, to build trust with players, and not now when people are literally is disappointed and they do play because the game as such is nice anymore, is not the game that could become, and trust with the company is totally broken and just people already wait nothing. And if they give him some wild chicken for an anniversary, then he says, well, we know they don't give anything like that. That if they give a chicken, then we are happy for the chicken. And it is true that in some way also the community is very tamed and indoctrinated, that on the other hand, capable Hoyoversus is the objective that had, and not to make a world game a lot better than it really could have been without taking away merit. It's an amazing game, but as I say all this, I explain it because if I feel like improvements, quality of life that they implement little by little, they are not bad. But they are late, and they are not up to what today, a game that is going to fulfill soon 5 years in the next August is already a little more than half a year, would not really deserve what is happening today. For what I have said in the intro, basically in general, a fall of expectation, a fall of expectation. All of Genshin Impact's social media interest, a general drop in the confidence of the fae, people who are already broken by themselves, and I think a pretty big disappointment that reflects on everything in Mavuika didn't meet expectations. Mavuika didn't break Genshin and Mavuika's sales record. Compared to Alekino, who has come after Mavuika, and who has sold practically nothing. Alekino has stayed at the gates of overcoming the first time that he came to Arakino. That is to say, having said that in 5.3 came the supposed character who would break all Genshin's records, and Azo, the 1st of January beginning the new year, and in that same banner, Arlecchino, that was the previous character who broke sales records, of course sales of the 5.3, although they follow positioning very well, have not met minimum expectations, and with the video with expectations. I'm not just talking about this banner, but I'm talking about everything in general. It's very noticeable because once past Mavuika, and if we approach the end of the 5.3, beginning of 5.4, although there is interest by Fiorina that literally 5.4 is going to lift it and hold only Fiorina, the Hydro Archon, that, in my opinion, it is the best support of the game, as I always said, and for many, it is the best character of the game. Basically, people have lost interest and are dropping Genshin on the best update that NATLAN has had the sharpest fall of interest of players and everything else. That is having Genshin in his story is literally being now. And this video will still be saying before the 5.4 goes out with Mizuki, because it's happened because they've tightened a lot. They've sold a lot of smoke. Mavuika has not exceeded expectations, and people already came with the disappointment of the whole that they sold at the beginning of NATLAN, that in the end it was literally nothing. And now, when they have been given Zays, they already have the Sumavuika, and nothing else goes away. What happens, and what is the general atmosphere in the video game ecosystem today for this to happen? Two very important factors. Internal factor within Genshin Impact have started in NATLAN, a power creep chain, let's say. aggressive or what the player of Genshin Impact was accustomed not so aggressive for. Example other porridge, or without going further Honkai Star Rail, which is another game of the same franchise. But that's actually making the players feel that Alakino's specific case is a character. That was the best DPS Pyro, and the second best DPS of the game, recently in less than a year has been power creep by another Pyro DPS, with which characters like Alakino that broke record. Zales, the company itself, has literally just given a sign that in less than a year they have lost courage, and let's not talk about this being a game of Chinese monkeys, as I always remember in that this is not an asset of real life where something can be revalued or not and generate you tomorrow. Let's say an increase in your estate, if you have something that you know can actually increase in value, is losing value in a fictional world of Chinese monkeys with a virtual currency where never you're going to recover, as we say, other video games where they have NFT systems and so on, where in some now you can sell, for example, the knives of the Call of Duty or the Counter-Strike knife and so on, and get that value back here. Not that it's here anymore, they're not just it, making something fictitious lose value, but on top of that fictional thing, never ever had a real value. Let's say in real life out of pixels, and yet they're giving that signal directly to the players, and today that translates into that already the players feel that as soon as they give hoyovers a wish to become a power creep of Novelet, and to take out the Dragon Hydro, legendary mouth dripper, in which at any time a power creep electro is made. It is necessary because the electros to this day are really very low as Keras Electro, and to take as a quagmire chlorine of riding with what wouldn't be worth going crazy so much. By Raiden's famous C2 or C3 and so on, and this just like they suddenly pull out Citale or Chilonen, and suddenly Citlali and Jalonen are the best supports of the game, outpacing everything that previously existed, makes the players no longer have illusion for the reruns, have no illusion. Because he returns a character, less specifically Furina, because he is the best character in the game. As a support, maybe Chilonen because of how important also was the important thing about his C2 for many teams, but the players, if a new character who comes out is no longer very rosy pro max, and all of a sudden, it improves you 3 or 4 teams of the best of the game are literally losing interest already. And the clearest example is to make him Queen. Genshin Impact always sold well, the carries always sold well, the carries, but and yet the previous character who broke record sales of the game, Halakino, has sold practically nothing because he came right after his power creep Mavuika, and then there's the external factor, which is the external factor that we're in today's 2025, where the general market of video games, and here, as I have commented, an opinion regarding the things you can and continue to do wrong. Hoyoverse comment on a contrary opinion defending a Hoyoverse because it is important to see all points of view and not to have a radicalized opinion. Today over is, I think they try to at least strive within what they can and their Asian culture. It's different, and sometimes we don't understand it from the West. There's also a factor that's affecting to all this and has nothing to do with Hoyoverse, which is the 2095 has been a hard year for the market. Video games giant companies that we knew as giants of the industry, and that many will have in your memory as Ubisoft or Ubisoft in English, or EA are basically companies that they're not going bankrupt because they're always big giants who can be rescued or launch an amazing video game and survive or change the course of actions and expectation of those own companies. But to this day, I think everyone knows the mass layoff stories with video games and the big failures that Ubisoft and EA are currently having. Evolution of the video game market, and above all, a 2025 full of a history back of advertising attempts and AA games that seem to today simply burgers in a fast and repetitive assembly chain where they only want to sell you an $80 video game where if you buy that, you are ahead of 3 days and 80,000 DLCs. The game comes to $120, $130 and the game turns out that both triple and so much history has 4 mechanics. The YouTubers of YouTubers, they'll make 3 videos and it ends up being something that doesn't meet expectations, like lots of video games that they are coming to the head today that they have gone out during 2024, 2025, and to this day is it more complicated to feel that many video games are real jewels like they were video games ago. 5 or 10 years, there is a crisis in the current video game market, there are layoffs, and there So let's say a rectification of the market because there was about investment and it was a little inflated. And last, this 2025 is being the year where most is being attacked in quotation marks attacking because it is for the good of the people and is regularizing and trying to legislate on all mechanics. Video games are having mainly because the FIFA and Ultimate Team that you already know are the gacha and the FIFA cards that is the same as the gacha of Genshin. Video games gacha in general that they are having thanks to Genshin, who was the leader of the market a boom with many other video games in the gacha ecosystem, and above all and again a external factor that in quotation marks not let's say depends on hoyovers but affects it directly, along with all the above, and is the third point, and is that in 25 for the first time we really do have an ecosystem with a healthy competition in very quotation marks all of porridge included. 2024 really reigned the Genshin impact, and the Honkai is king being Honkai is king of. The same company however searched this to say there was still an oligopoly that is basically a monopoly, but of two in this case, games belonging to Hoyoverse existed an oligopoly in 2024. And Hoyoverse kept doing whatever he wanted, and that's why they gave it the same way that Fontaine deflated. Halfway forward, because in the end they still had a little bit of that oligopoly in 2025. WoA is much more established, and while still having a community not as large as expected, is a firm competitor and is a game that its players talk about quite well. And although always there is toxicity as with football teams, and those in the Bara are anti-Maridists and idiot. Madrids are anti-Vasist, and I hope this is not seen here as a point, please, if in what game. And he's in my community. He can think about it. I'd invite them not to enter that toxic loop that you are seeing a lot in networks where Genshin players automatically must be against WoA. I don't know why, because the companies you kill yourself for video games, they will not be paid for it. And vice versa, that WoA players begin to criticize Genshin as if they were paid or life went on in it, was the worst video game since many players. WoA players are Genshin players, who with many reasons related to this video and others have lost faith in Genshin, and you could say that they are frustrated players of Genshin who see the day thinking about how bad your ex wasn't your current girlfriend wouldn't like to hear you talk all over your ex-girlfriend's time. If she was so bad, just turn the page and enjoy the buttering, or enjoy. Of the two things that with video games you can with people, it's not very good to treat them that badly. And to be unfaithful, but you have understood me perfectly, do not be a side and that automatically. For being of one side, you are continually generating hatred and criticizing the other being of your side, and enjoy it and do positive things for that, or even enjoy the two video games. Now closing this is finally a real market in 2025 where people can choose between the love and Deep Space, which is the game this judging is dating, and I don't know what. But it's a gacha at last, and after all, and compete with Genshin for winnings, you can play WoA, which is from Kuro Games, which is not of Hoyoverse, and finally also has a way of escape to understand and try a game that does not have so many mistakes on the part of the company, and I do not mean within the game, but with the deal toe. The community as Genshin has them, and has a much larger gap space than he had. Literally last year, that's why a lot of people today are taking a mechanic that I wouldn't recommend the truth because it can affect many external things to just play porridge, that is. I go to Genshin when there's a nice banner and a waifu, I don't know what, and I take it out and I do a couple of things, and cut felling, and then quit Genshin and I go 2 months to another, and when the other is bored and where there's a lot of publicity coming from, I don't know which now, I'm going to take out the new character or the new region of Honkai Star Rail, and then I don't know what. And that what it's going to do is you have a gigantic mess. Remember not that ye have in every account that ye bear no account unto the day that ye know not what you have, and that only because of the anxiety and the FOMO of taking out the character of turn that has done to you. Back to the game of turn, whatever tomorrow will be more, I hope you're going to spend a lot more money than you spent just playing a gacha, and the worst thing is that you're going to find out and understand much less than any of the porridge you're playing, and in the end that's going to translate much more anxiety, impulsivity, spending money, and above all tactics that will lead you to playability very unhealthy, very toxic, and I think it is very difficult to refute what I'm saying, and very few people argue against it, but above all, what it's going to do is to really minimize it. your experience and fun because you are not playing for enjoying a game because he fell in love with some of that game. You're playing for FOMO. You're playing like you're being respectful, honey, and an apology as if you were little animals chasing little lights, coloring dopamine that it generates you when the legendary comes out on the banner, and you're literally not even knowing what you're doing. You're just chasing little lights, literally. That's not healthy behavior. Within what fits, and all these things are the ones that are making this year really. Not only does it meet expectations, but after there's been a decent 5-3, then it really does. All of this has been a huge trip, and a loss of interest on social networks. Part of the players that could do hoyover for since we have raised the problem, let us raise the solution that is the best attitude there is with all this and every time something bad happens, because I think that things you all know first don't sell smoke and then really contribute in the game. I mean, if they're going to tell you one thing, that then whatever's really what, we receive either equal or higher than what they promise us. It is even better that they promise less and then give more and we will be surprised, but not promised more and give less and people are disappointed. Number 1, number 2 cannot really leverage both in the characters and in Silonen and in Silone. Venda is not so much smoke that NATLAN was going to be an incredible region come out the way crying. And then all of a sudden the 5.1 there's no map that the 5.2 cousin Mavuika has map but sits down as well. But it is not enough to expect Mavuika to come out that there will be no map in spite of Mavuika, and also, despite taking out the character who is very well, people also feel that 5.3 was a region, in quotation marks, a little empty. Even though there was also the right of a flashlight and character skin, 3-4 stars, and so it wasn't bad, but the character claims it, you play it twice, and that's it. And again that the 5.4 again is empty and supported only by Furina. Here are 2 options that are going to lead again, and I hope to make a mistake on bad management. A disappointment on the part of the players, a large part then will say good, at least from there. 5.5 then it will be cinema, and all versions of GameShift will come with map and with epicity and perhaps announce Captain Playable. But if what remains of Genshin, despite having empty since the first half of NATLAN, the second half of NATLAN is still this empty. Solutions that would have really diversified the map would have misled the Hudbari in it. 5.3 or 5.4 and 5.3 have felt the best version of Genshin Impact because it already had many dice to be the best region of the best version. 5.3 of Genshin Impact could promise less and give more, could find out what people really need, and today if they go to implement a power creep so aggressive that it makes people lose interest, as I have explained before, in characters, no matter how strong they are, because people think if the character is not very hot, it's because they're going to be able to believe it right away, and if it's very rough, because right away it's the same. That making him Quino in less than a year can crepe him, then there is almost no interest in all this. You could put a new game where all this really serves a lot more. You have to have 3 or 4 teams, but 2. As in the Abyss, there is a level 100 that is also not a thing that people stress or complain, because it's true that Genshin's community complains about everything in the end. But let it make people understand a little bit more the theme of how the game works, and that great in-game doesn't have giant rewards the same or even a little less that the Abyss, but at least if it poses a fun challenge to be able to play more and to be able to take much more advantage of your Chinese monkeys, and above all you could understand that players not only want rewards, players and content creators that keep players with the hype in the game, and I read messages and comments your every day saying, Phil, if it wasn't for you or for this or for the other, I would no longer play Genshin because I do not find him sometimes. I want to do something and maybe a video of your weird teams and I feel like trying them out, and then I'm inspired to keep playing about everything people want and what you want. And it seems absurd to me that a man on the screen, that a YouTuber random who is not a billionaire owner of the company will be able to see, and that the people who control the company will not be able to. What people want after so much expectation, but that's what people want. Fildilo, yeah, what people want is, and content creators feel that the company really cares about the players and doing things right with the games that have triumphed and triumph today in the market of video games and which actually generate more than mainly Fortnite and LoL League of Legends Riot creators and players if they feel even though they also have their mechanics and their stories and their things that are not also light. Everything in this life, because nothing is perfect, neither I nor any of us are perfect, but if you feel an atmosphere in which the company, if for example they ask for the construction mode to return, comes back if they ask for a mode day. No construction to just play a shooter. Put it if you ask for campaigns with content creators, or skins for their content creators. Put it if they want them to do, for example, collaborations. Scott and a lot of people inside Fortnite try to do it within the possibilities of each of the companies, although no one can tell me that Hoyoverse does not have millions and possibilities to be able to do a lot of these things. No longer, I say, only in Genshin, but in all. And especially if people want to enjoy the game in certain ways and want give what we say is its best version towards the game, and that the company responds with all the love that the community is giving him in a manner at least equitable. Hoyoverse would not have why behave like it behaves, and from there I put those examples of the companies because Riot with LOL, Epic with Fortnite, or Supercell with all the game series since Clash Royale and all these Supercell games that also people are happy with how these games evolve despite of also having their mechanical gacha and a lot of other things, because to this day the gambling is what that moves people and that's what they like, and it's the fashion of video games. That's what the Hoyoverse people, I wish you'd see this sometime, and I hope everyone who's watching this video in the comments show your support, because I think it is the factor and the fundamental point that many players in the end treat Genshin Impact today as a prostitute, i.e. I enter sack my Chinese Mona. I do 3 silly things. I go to the orange page to see the slimes because I know you do it a lot, and then I go to another gacha and Genshin ends up being a rag to use and throw because the company itself treats people that way. If the company not to treat people as a rag to use and throw, but to give them to understand that they value them, and thanks that they are where they are thanks to people would return him to the game and to the company. Little more people, I hope you like this great and care a lot to have very good day. And bye.